I remember the descent. Our fleet broke through the atmosphere like judgment itself, 30 warships cutting through clouds that had probably never seen vessels of our magnitude. From orbit, their colony looked like a wound on the planet's surface. Scars of brown and gray, where green should have been. Smoke rising from a dozen points. Thin columns reaching toward us like desperate fingers. Even from that height, I could see the chaos of their architecture. Buildings thrown together without pattern or purpose. Roads that curved when they should have been straight, waste and inefficiency written into every structure. This was going to be clean, clinical, necessary. That's what I told myself as our dropship shuddered through the final descent. Around me, my squad sat in practiced silence, weapons mag-locked to thigh plates, eyes forward. We'd done this before, on 7 worlds. Eliminate the infestation, secure resources, move on. The human colonies were always the same. Desperate, clinging to planets they'd poisoned, breeding beyond their means, consuming until nothing remained. They were parasites with delusions of civilization. Command's briefing had been succinct. The colony housed approximately 40,000 humans. Military presence is minimal. Resistance expected, but manageable. Civilians would attempt to flee. Standard protocol was to prevent escape. No witnesses, no survivors, no complications. The mathematics were simple. They had already failed as a species. The dropship's engines screamed as we made the final approach. Through the viewport, I watched the colony grow larger, details emerging from the blur. I could see their defensive positions now, hastily erected barriers, figures moving with the jerky panic of creatures who knew what was coming. They'd had 3 days since our fleet appeared. 3 days to prepare for the inevitable. It wouldn't matter. The landing was hard, deliberate. We wanted them to feel it, to know we'd arrived. The ramp dropped, and a harsh light flooded the troop bay. I was 4th out, boots hitting packed earth still warm from our engines. The air tasted wrong. Too much oxygen, too much moisture, the tang of burning plastics and something organic I couldn't identify. Human scent, probably. Their colonies always stank of biological desperation. Our squad fanned out in textbook formation, weapons up, sensors active. The colony sprawled before us, a maze of prefab structures and makeshift additions that violated every principle of efficient design. I could hear them already. Voices raised in their primitive language, the clatter of movement, the high-pitched sounds their young made. Somewhere, an alarm was wailing, pointless and shrill. Squad leader Vithrak's voice came through on the command channel, calm and measured. Advance to primary objectives. Engagement rules in effect. Eliminate resistance, secure the perimeter, and contain civilians. Standard Purge Protocol. Standard Purge Protocol. 4 words that meant the end of everything for 40,000 living beings. But that's what they were, just living beings. Not sentient, not really. Not in any way that mattered. They felt, yes, but so did animals. They built, but so did insects. They died, and the galaxy would be cleaner for it. We moved forward. The first contact came at the colony perimeter, where they'd erected barriers from cargo containers and local stone, crude, but not entirely ineffective. They'd had military training, whoever designed this. As we approached, plasma fire lit up the afternoon sky. Bright green streaks that hissed through the air above our heads. Their aim was poor, panicked. We didn't return fire immediately. Let them waste ammunition, let them feel the futility of resistance. Then Vithrak gave the order, and we opened up. Our plasma weapons operated on principles they couldn't hope to understand, each discharge superheating air into lethal projectiles of contained energy. The barriers erupted in molten splashes where our fire struck. I watched through my weapon's scope, as human figures scrambled for cover, some falling as near misses caught them with peripheral heat. They returned fire with ballistic weapons, actual chemical propellants, launching metal projectiles. Primitive, loud, inefficient, but they kept shooting. That was the first thing that struck me as odd. We'd breached their outer positions within minutes, punched through their defensive line in 3 places. Any rational tactical assessment would indicate retreat, regroup, establish secondary positions. Instead, they held ground, even as their positions became untenable. I watched one soldier, male, judging by the build, cover a breach with sustained fire, even as his position took direct hits. He had to know he was dead, had to understand the mathematics of the situation. Yet he stayed, firing until a plasma round caught him center mass, and he simply ceased. "Foolish," Cathral said over the squad channel. "They die for nothing." I agreed. Of course, I agreed. It was foolish. They were dying for nothing, achieving nothing, delaying the inevitable by minutes at most. Yet something in my tactical processor flagged the behavior as anomalous. This wasn't panic. This was deliberate. They were buying time. For what? We pushed through the perimeter and into the colony proper. The streets, if you could call them that, twisted between buildings in seemingly random patterns. Terrible design for defense, but we soon discovered it wasn't random at all. They knew these paths. We didn't. They used that knowledge, firing from windows and doorways, falling back before we could return effective fire, forcing us to clear every structure, every room, every shadow. They were making us work for it. I saw my first civilian casualty 3 blocks into the advance. Not a casualty. I saw civilians. A group of them running from a building we'd just marked for clearance. Mixed ages, including several juveniles. They ran perpendicular to our advance, toward what I assumed was a designated shelter. Standard evacuation behavior. We could have cut them down easily. They were exposed, panicked, defenseless. We didn't need to. From a 3rd-story window, a human soldier opened fire on our position, not at the civilians, at us, drawing our attention, our return fire. I watched this happen in the split second of tactical assessment. The soldier knew we could see the civilians, knew that by firing, they'd mark themselves as priority targets. They fired anyway. 3 plasma rounds hit the building. The 3rd floor ceased to exist in a satisfying explosion of superheated material. The soldier was dead before the structural collapse was completed. The civilians escaped. Waste of resources, Cathral observed. Sacrificing combat units to save non-combatants. Illogical. Yes, illogical. But it happened again. And again. Every encounter followed the same pattern. Human soldiers positioning themselves between our forces and their civilians, trading their lives for seconds, for meters, for the slim possibility that someone else might survive. It wasn't strategy. Strategy would dictate preserving your military assets, using them to maximum effect. This was something else. The afternoon wore into evening. The colony became a labyrinth of burning structures and corpses. We'd secured 40% of the territory, eliminated perhaps half their military capability. By any objective measure, we were winning. The outcome was inevitable. Yet the resistance hadn't collapsed. If anything, it had intensified. I began to notice their faces. Before, they'd been targets, silhouettes and scopes, thermal signatures behind cover. But as we moved deeper into the residential sectors, I saw them clearly. Saw their expressions. Humans wear emotion on their faces in ways we don't. Everything visible, everything external. I'd been taught this was weakness, that showing feeling was showing vulnerability. But what I saw wasn't weakness. Fear, yes, absolute terror in some cases, but also determination. Rage, defiance. I watched a female soldier with half her armor blown off hold a doorway against our advance. her weapon's barrel glowing red from continuous fire. Her face twisted into something between a snarl and a scream. We brought the building down on her. She never stopped firing. What drives that? What calculation results in that behavior? My tactical processor couldn't categorize it. Night fell and the colony burned. Fires painted everything in shades of orange and red, sending smoke into a sky where our ships hovered like patient predators. We'd established forward positions throughout the secured sectors, methodically tightening the perimeter around the remaining resistance. They'd retreated to the colony's center, where the population density was highest. Cornered, desperate, finished. Command ordered the final push at dawn. We advanced as the sun rose, turning the smoke into a golden haze that would have been beautiful if not for what it represented. The last defensive line was a hastily built barrier across a wide street, more debris than fortification. Behind it I could see them. Soldiers, civilians, the distinction barely meaningful now. Everyone who could hold a weapon was holding one. They had to know this was the end. Vithrak called for heavy weapons. We were done with precision, done with patience. The order was to collapse the entire defensive position, bury them in rubble, end this. 2 of our squad moved forward with plasma mortars, beginning targeting calculations. That's when I saw her, a human female, civilian clothing, clutching a juvenile to her chest. They'd been behind the barrier, but as we advanced, something had shifted. A structural collapse, maybe, or simple panic. They were exposed, 20 meters from any cover, frozen in the open space between our forces and theirs. The juvenile was crying, that high-pitched human sound that triggers something instinctive, even in species that don't care for their young the way mammals do. The female was looking at us. Not at escape routes, not at cover. At us. Specifically, I realized, at me. My weapon was raised. I had a clear shot. She knew it. She didn't run. She turned her back to us, curled her body around the juvenile, and waited. Just waited. Covering the juvenile with her own body, presenting her back, her vulnerable, unarmored back, to our weapons. The mathematics were simple. Plasma fire would kill her instantly, the juvenile perhaps a second later. She couldn't stop it, couldn't prevent it, couldn't change the outcome. Yet she positioned herself as a shield anyway. "Clear shot," Cathrall said over the channel. "Take it!" My finger was on the trigger. Target acquired, distance calculated, wind negligible, shot difficulty minimal. I could see her shoulders shaking, fear, grief, preparation for pain. I didn't know, couldn't know. She was alien to me in every way that mattered. But she wasn't running. The plasma mortar fired, not at her. At the barrier, at the defensive position. The explosion was catastrophic, heat and pressure washing across the street in a wave that lifted bodies and threw debris like a child's toys. The shock wave hit the female and juvenile, slamming them forward, down, rolling them across the pavement. When the dust cleared, she was moving, slowly, painfully. The juvenile beneath her was screaming but alive. She'd taken the impact on her back, absorbed the worst of it with her own body. She was bleeding. I could see it even from distance. But she was moving, checking the juvenile, using her hands to feel for injuries she couldn't see. Human defenders rushed from the shattered barrier, dragged them both back to relative safety. We could have killed them easily, should have. But the mortars were already cycling for the next bombardment, and there were larger targets, and the moment passed. I stood there, weapon still raised, trying to process what I'd witnessed. "They're insane," Cathrall said, and the rest of the squad made sounds of agreement, sacrificing themselves for offspring, for non-viable genetic investment, emotional parasites, all of them. Yes, insane. That was the logical conclusion. That's what I told myself as we advanced through the ruins of their last defense, as we cleared buildings and eliminated the remaining pockets of resistance, as the human colony ceased to exist, block by block, life by life. But I kept seeing her back, the way she'd turned, deliberately presenting herself as target, as shield, as sacrifice. No hesitation, no calculation of odds or survival probability. Just immediate, absolute protection. For what gain? What purpose? The juvenile would die anyway. Everyone here would die. She'd bought nothing with her sacrifice except a few more minutes of existence for a being that would cease existing before the day ended. Logically, rationally, mathematically, it was meaningless. So why couldn't I stop thinking about it? The final phase of the purge took us into the colony's administrative center, a cluster of larger buildings that had probably once represented human ambition and organization. Now they were burning husks, walls collapsed, roofs caved in, interiors exposed like anatomical studies. We moved through them methodically, clearing room by room, floor by floor. I'd become separated from my squad during a structural collapse, found myself alone in a section of building that had once been offices. Human workspaces, preserved in the moment of abandonment. Primitive computers still displaying frozen data. Personal items scattered across desks. Images of human faces pinned to walls. Family groups, I realized. Genetic clusters. They kept images of their kin in their working spaces. Why? I moved deeper into the structure, following a corridor that still had structural integrity. Smoke was thick here, making my optical sensors struggle. Fire crackled somewhere above, and I could hear the groan of metal under stress. The building was dying. I should have retreated, rejoined my squad. Instead, I found him. The human was in what had once been a command center, judging by the equipment. He was older than most soldiers I'd encountered, with graying hair and lined face. Military bearing even while dying, which he clearly was. Massive trauma to his torso, blood pooling beneath him, breathing shallow and labored. He had a weapon nearby, but didn't reach for it when I entered. Just watched me with eyes that held neither fear nor hope. We stared at each other across the burning room. I should have killed him immediately. That was protocol. But something made me hesitate. Maybe it was the mother and child. Maybe it was the entire day of witnessing behavior that defied every tactical model I'd been taught. Maybe I just wanted an answer. Why? I asked, my translator rendering the question in their language. He understood. I could see comprehension in his expression, followed by something that might have been bitter amusement. He coughed, blood flecking his lips, took a breath that sounded wet and wrong. Why what? His voice was rough, but clear enough. Why fight? The outcome was inevitable. You knew this. Your people knew this. Every defensive position, every sacrifice, every death, meaningless, delaying inevitable extinction by hours. Why? The human made a sound that might have been a laugh. You really don't understand, do you? Explain it. He was quiet for a moment, gathering strength or thoughts or both. Above us, something collapsed with a thunderous crash. The building shuddered. Neither of us moved. You think we fight to live, he said finally. Each word cost him, I could see it. You think survival is the goal. The mathematics of existence, live or die, win or lose, persist or perish. That's your equation, isn't it? It's the only equation. Everything else is delusion. Another sound that might have been laughter or coughing. More blood. He was fading, but his eyes were sharp, focused on me with an intensity that was uncomfortable. We don't fight to live, he said. We fight because we remember. The words meant nothing to me. Remember what? Everything. His breathing was deteriorating, words coming in fragments now. Everyone, every promise, every person who came before, every dream, every hope, every mistake. We carry them all. When I fight for my daughter who died on Earth, for my wife who survived to see this colony built, for the friend who pulled me out of a burning tank when I was 20, for the child I saw yesterday learning to read, for the future they'll never have. He coughed again, harder this time, his body convulsing with the effort. When he continued, his voice was barely a whisper. You think it's illogical, dying for people already dead, for futures that won't happen, for meaning you can't calculate. But that's what makes us human. We fight not because we'll win, but because we refuse to forget what matters. The mother who covered her child? She wasn't calculating survival odds. She was being what humanity is, what we've always been. But you'll all die anyway, I said. Not argument, statement of fact. We were always going to die. The ghost of a smile. Everyone dies. That's not the question. The question is what you are when death comes. Do you submit, calculate, accept, or do you fight, not for victory, but for defiance? For the statement that you were here, you mattered, you loved, you remembered. His eyes were losing focus now, looking past me, through me, at something I couldn't see. You can kill us all, he whispered. Take this world, every world, but you'll never understand what you destroyed. Because you can't. You've optimized everything except the one thing that makes existence worthwhile. You've calculated every variable except the only one that matters. Which is, but he was gone. The light left his eyes mid-sentence, his chest stilled, and I was alone with a corpse in a burning building on a dying world. You think we fight to live. We fight because we remember. The words echoed in my tactical processor, refusing to file into any existing category. I stood there for what might have been minutes, watching the human's body, trying to understand what he'd meant, trying to understand why it mattered to me that I didn't understand. The ceiling groaned. Structural failure imminent. Time to leave. I didn't. Instead, I did something I'd never done before. Something that wasn't in any protocol or training manual. I moved the human's body away from the pooled blood, positioned him with care, closed his eyes. I didn't know why. It served no tactical purpose. The building would collapse soon anyway, and his body would be crushed or burned or buried. But I did it anyway. Because he'd been alive, because he'd fought, because he'd remembered, because maybe that mattered. I left the building moments before it collapsed entirely, rejoined my squad for the final sweep. The battle was over. The colony was secured. By the time night fell again, no human remained alive in that place. 40,000 beings ceased. Purge complete. Mission successful. The celebration on the command ship was subdued, professional. We'd taken casualties. More than expected, but within acceptable parameters. The colony's resources would be harvested, the planet would be reassessed for viability, and we would move on to the next target. Standard procedure, successful operation. I couldn't bring myself to join the others. Instead, I returned to the surface. Alone, without authorization. Violating protocol in ways that could have resulted in discipline. I walked through the ruins as the second sunset painted everything in shades of red and purple. Walked among the corpses we hadn't yet processed, the destroyed buildings, the scattered remnants of 40,000 lives. I saw them differently now. The bodies weren't just casualties anymore, tactical data points in an after-action report. They were positions, statements, final choices. Here, a soldier who died holding a doorway, buying time for people who died anyway. There, a group of civilians clustered together, adults surrounding juveniles in death as they must have in life. Everywhere, evidence of that same pattern. Humans choosing to fight, to protect, to sacrifice, even when logic dictated surrender. We'd called them weak, emotional, illogical, parasites. But weakness doesn't fight when fighting is hopeless. Weakness calculates and submits. What I'd witnessed wasn't weakness. It was something terrifying, something we'd never accounted for in our tactical assessments. Humanity hadn't been weak. They'd been alive, desperately, defiantly, illogically alive. They'd fought not because they could win, but because that's what being human meant. Emotion wasn't their weakness. It was their most dangerous weapon. The one thing we couldn't defend against, couldn't counter, couldn't understand. Because we'd optimized it out of ourselves generations ago. I thought about the mother and child, the way she'd turned her back, instant and absolute in her choice. No calculation, no hesitation, no survival instinct overriding protective instinct. Just pure, immediate sacrifice. We'd been taught that such behavior was aberrant, a flaw in their psychology. But what if it wasn't a flaw? What if it was the point? I stood at the edge of the colony's central square, where the last battle had been fought. Bodies everywhere, human, and a few of ours. The humans had lost, utterly, completely. By every measure that mattered to us, they had failed. Yet looking at them, at the way they'd fallen, at the protective positions and defiant last stands, I couldn't see failure. I saw something that terrified me more than any enemy we'd ever faced. I saw beings who'd chosen meaning over survival, who'd fought for each other rather than for victory, who'd remembered, as that dying commander said, everything and everyone that mattered. We'd won. We'd conquered their world, eliminated their presence, secured our objectives. By every tactical and strategic measure, this was victory. So why did it feel like defeat? The truth settled into my tactical processor slowly, unwelcome and undeniable. We'd won the battle, but humanity had won something deeper. They'd proven that the most fragile species could also be the hardest to break. Not through strength or strategy or technology, but through sheer illogical refusal to accept what logic demanded. They'd fought because they remembered, and in fighting, in dying, in sacrificing, they'd forced me to remember too, to see them not as targets or tactical problems, but as beings who'd chosen to be more than survival algorithms, who'd been alive in ways we'd forgotten how to be. The sun set completely, and the ruins descended into darkness, broken only by dying fires. I stood there until someone from my squad came looking for me, until duty and protocol reasserted themselves, until I had to return to the ship and file my reports and continue being what I was. But something had changed. Something in me that I couldn't name, couldn't categorize, couldn't eliminate from my systems. The humans were gone, erased, extinct. We'd achieved our objective and we conquered their world. But I think they conquered something inside us, or at least inside me. That night on the ship, I filed my after-action report. Tactical assessment, successful purge, acceptable casualties, objectives met. But in my private logs, in entries I'd never share with command or squad, I wrote different words. I wrote about a mother who turned her back, a soldier who held an impossible position, a commander who fought not to live, but because he remembered, about 40,000 beings who'd chosen meaning over mathematics, emotion over logic, sacrifice over survival. And I wrote one final entry, a question that would haunt me for the rest of my service. If we've optimized everything except what makes existence worthwhile, what exactly have we become? And in destroying those who remember what matters, what have we lost? I don't have answers. Only memories I can't delete, of a day when humanity died and something in me died with them. Or perhaps something in me woke up. I'm not sure which possibility terrifies me more. The fleet moves on tomorrow. Another world, another purge, another victory. I'll fight because that's what I am, what I was built to be. But I'll carry something new with me now, something dangerous and illogical and completely human. I'll remember.